Welcome to Life is for Living. I'm Kylie Buckley and I'm here with David J. Riddell from Living Wisdom. I want to read something to you all about obsessive compulsive disorders. Compulsive means doing what I really do not want to do. Obsessive, doing it repeatedly until a feeling allows me to stop. David, is this something that a lot of people struggle with in life?
Oh, yes, it is to a greater or lesser degree. I would say that a proportion of the men I counsel for pornography addiction could be described as OCD in that area. A proportion of thieves who are kleptomaniacs could be described as an OCD. Certainly, binge eating and unstable binging could be an OCD. They don't need the food, they just want the comfort. And even when they don't need the comfort, they're eating anyway. We see it with hygiene. We see it with people showering 2 and 3 times a day or washing their hands with soap until they've washed all the skin off their hands. We see it with people checking the doors are locked, checking the gates are locked, and then going and checking them again and again.
Hmm.
We see it with people who are always thinking they've run over something. They have to back up and see if they ran over something. Cat, dog, bump in the road, person, whatever. And I guess we have all been deeply double minded and ambivalent about the thing that we're doing. Why am I doing this? I don't even like this food. Why am I eating this? Why am I looking at this? And so they get divided into a deep sense of cognitive dissonance. Part of them wants to, and part of them doesn't. And the other thing, of course, is that they, if OCD is a pit, then the walls of that pit are emotion based reasoning and default moods. So, how do you actually go without the crutch, the familiar comforter? How do you go without that bodice ripping novel that you read before you go to sleep, or that tipple that puts you off to sleep? How do you get through the limbic lag of discomfort and anxiety that hits you if you dare to go without your comfy, your pseudo rubber dummy, your blankie? Because that's what these things are. They're like an emotional blanket. They're like that rubber dummy to the baby. They give them a sense of groundedness, connectedness. I know some people who compulsively touch and stroke their bed, or they compulsively playing with their hair the whole time. And if they try to stop biting their nails, they can't do it. It's such a reassurance to them that they can feel quite anxious if you tied their hands behind their back or did something drastic. And I do think that the nervous system has a big role to play in the OCD because it's latched on to some form of self reinforcement that gives it a sense of groundedness, and it's not going to let that go.
Mhm.
A man can experience real comfort and reassurance when he's viewing yet another breast or another naked woman, or when he's getting excitement from pornography copulation. And it can be that the moment his wife walks out of the house, his brain says, right, you're free, get into it. You can do it. You can get away with it. And women with their female version of pornography, which may be the sexy romantic novels, or it may just be food. And so they'll binge and they'll pig out when nobody's looking. And of course, then they're deeply ashamed, and maybe they try to bring it up. And bulimic temptations begin to control. So it's rather an uncomfortable nervous system that we have to do something with, and often that adjustment, Kylie, is deeply faulty.
Mm. Do you think, like in a car and reversing to see if you've run anything over, those sorts of things, do you think that's come from an echo or bad experience? Uh,
Yes, I do. Echoes can damage the mind and burn a searing circuit through the brain, and that can keep replaying. And that replay, that echo from the past, is really a symptom of PTSD.
mm,
One of the most reliable indicators of post traumatic stress disorder is when the internal reality uh, eclipses external reality
mhm.
and feelings eclipse reality completely. And what happens is that the emotion um, overrules the present reality, and they find themselves living again in a past scenario.
Mhm. Yeah, like that fear can come upon you. They keep reflecting back to it and reliving it, I suppose. Yeah, and I suppose with the comforting of the comfort food, it's probably camouflaging a bigger thing inside them that they feel gives them the reassurance that they are looking for, maybe.
Well, as children, we gain reassurance from doing different things. And so, for one, it's playing with dolls, and for another, it's winning at the video game, and for another, it's becoming number one on the musical instrument or at the sport. And
Mm-hmm.
so, retreating into those activities later in life can become quite obsessive.
Mm-hmm. So to break that cycle, if it's a cycle of hygiene and cleanliness, I mean, we're all told to be very clean and to keep things, especially during COVID, people were washing their hands a lot, things like that. But I suppose it's fear-based, germs, how do you break that when it becomes obsessive, not normal? Because it's good to have germs on you, a certain amount of germs. That's why our immune systems are kept strong, is by having a certain amount of germs.
Well, first of all, a little bit of psychotherapy instruction here. In psychotherapy, we're not just looking for the king lie or the ruling misbelief. In psychotherapy, we actually revisit the first trauma, the introductory trauma,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we revise the meaning of that trauma and the lessons we learned from that trauma that we need to unlearn. And once we've revisited the trauma and we've revised the conclusions, we have to relinquish the behaviors that we are acting out of now. We have to relinquish the survival kits and the defense mechanisms that grew out of that. And so, revisit, revise, relinquish encapsulates what I do every day with some of my clients who are not able, by an act of the will, to give up or get free of this behavior that's ruling their life. I mean, every addict, by definition, has at least part of their will ensnared and captured.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they wanted to give up because they know this thing that they do is destroying their life, they can't, because a greater part of their brain is saying, no, I need this.
Mm-hmm.
Play games with your therapist, tell them whatever story you want, but don't quit because you need this. And so it never occurs to the chain smoking nicotine addict that this cigarette that they're taking as a solution to their nervousness is not actually the solution to their nervousness. It's actually the fuel and the source of tomorrow's nervousness.
Mm-hmm.
They have not really grasped that what they think is the solution to the pain and the guilt and the problem is actually the cause of it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That's what it is to be an addict. It's to think that your enemy is your friend. And the Bible teacher Derek Prince said something that I've never forgotten decades ago. He said, remember this, people. God is only interested in delivering you from your enemies, not from your friends. And it's your job to decide whether this thing that you do to cope, which is not coping by definition,
Mm-hmm.
is your friend or your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I watched my father get intoxicated regularly, so I realized that intoxication would never, ever be my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never got hooked on alcohol, which was remarkable in itself because I come from a long line of addicted alcoholics. But not only that, I also realized that eating food didn't make the problems and issues and pains go away either.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but I realized that buying something brand spanking new and superior to everything my mates had only bought contentment for a very short time and then left me with the higher purchase payments.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you start to think, well, what do I want to build my life on? And what isn't going to turn into a trap to hook me in?
Mm.
And that's when I started seeking spiritual truth and eventually discovered Christ as the only one who ever said, I am the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The only one, Kylie, who ever said that.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything he said does set you free. The truth does set you free.
Well, he either is the truth or he's a lunatic. Those are the only two options you've really got.
Yeah. True. Very true. Okay. All right. I don't think is there anything else you want to cover? You've got quite a lot here in obsessive compulsive disorders with truth coaches. So maybe we'll do another session of that coming up.
Well, just before we move off, let me add this a concept that is very powerful, and every counselor should be well aware of it if they know what they're doing, is limbic lag. And limbic lag is essential to get through if you're ever going to break an addiction. Briefly put, limbic lag is cold turkey. It's going without. It's getting used to going without. It's getting used to life without your OCD. Your best friend has deserted you. No, you've actually expelled them. Now you've got to live without your best friend. How are you going to do it? Well, you're going to do it by first of all becoming fully convinced and utterly persuaded that this thing was not your friend. It was always sabotaging your life. And until you reach that point, you're going to play games with yourself and live in self deception.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it's like driving on the wrong side of the road. It takes a while before the wrong side of the road feels like the right side of the road. And that's just the driver in the foreign land getting used to limbic lag. Now, exactly the same thing holds to going without your crutch, to going without your vicious friend who has betrayed you repeatedly. You slowly figured out that they are no longer welcome. You reject it from your life, whatever it is, but then you have to get used to life without it.
Mm.
Because you've got a big vacuum and a big void, you're very vulnerable to moving on to another and different addiction. And that's the temptation you've got to resist. You've got to say, what do normal people do when they're frightened, when they're guilty, when they're rejected, when they're anxious, when they're misjudged, when they're misunderstood? What do normal people tell themselves? Because I've got to discover what that is. And I've got to talk to myself like that as well, so that I don't reach for another quick fix, so that I can actually learn to live with rejection or being misjudged or being misunderstood or disappointment or betrayal, whatever it may be that you're poisoning your mind so it can't feel the full sting of it with. Don't do that. Don't do that. Learn how to reassure yourself with the right truth so you can stand and not reach for your comforter.
Mhm. Yes. I remember when I gave up smoking years ago, it was difficult, but you're right. You've got to get used to just not having it, tapping your fingers instead, doing something else. Just don't go there.
And the only way you can get used to not having it is by not having it.
Exactly. Exactly. And it is that lymph lag. It takes time. It's like trying like your children trying spicy food or trying something they haven't normally eaten before. You've got to have it a few times before you sort of start to think, yeah, I don't mind this now and get used to it. So,
That's
yeah.
why I thought that giving people vaping in the hope that that would get them off nicotine was such a sick joke.
Oh, yeah.
Such a joke.
Well, now there's lots of teenagers vaping that would never have smoked.
Don't start me.
No, I won't. All right, guys. That's it for this time. And we'll see you next time.
God bless.